One person who was delighted that Harry's deployment was cut short was his 22-year-old girlfriend, Chelsy Davy, the wild child daughter of Charles Davy, one of Zimbabwe's largest private landowners. Their relationship had been on again, off again for 4 years, but his absence reheated her affection. Freewheeling outdoorsiness and a hard-partying sense of fun defined Chelsea's appeal to Harry as much as her long legs and curtain of platinum hair. He loved her madly for over 7 years. Like Harry, Chelsy had edge. There was allure in the precarious backdrop of her Zimbabwean childhood under the reign of the alligator-faced despot Robert Mugabe. She bombed around Cape Town in a two-seater silver Mercedes. Her parents' wealth gave her an aura of the hedonistic Happy Valley set in Kenya in the 1920s and 30s. I think Chelsy wasn't just a party girl, she was a living rebuke to royal decorum. Her Zimbabwe roots, her barefoot bravado, even her snake-charming stories, they were intoxicating to Harry precisely because she was everything the palace wasn't. And yet, what a geopolitical mess. Mugabe, land grabs, safari blood money. If Chelsy had become Duchess, we'd be unpacking this scandal for decades. Harry's passion for Chelsy was always inextricably bound up with his longing to flee from the constraints of royal life. "I wish I could spend more time in Africa," Harry told Town and Country in 2017, going on to characterize the diverse peoples of 54 countries as a moral and demographic monolith, much as his ancestors might have done in less enlightened times. "I have this intense sense of complete relaxation and normality here. To not get recognized, to lose myself in the bush, with what I would call the most down-to-earth people on the planet, people dedicated to conservation, with no ulterior motives, no agendas, who would sacrifice everything for the betterment of nature." For a time, he said, he longed to be a park ranger. He first experienced this seduction just weeks after his mother's death, when Charles swept his devastated 13-year-old son along for some special bonding on that official trip to South Africa, Swaziland, and Lesotho. It was Harry's 3 days in the bush in Botswana, viewing wildlife from an open-topped Land Rover, while his father burnished his own image on his royal roadshow, that made the deepest impression on Harry at an exquisitely vulnerable time. I feel this is Harry's inner exodus. The romanticism of Africa wasn't just love for the land, it was trauma avoidance, pure and simple. After Diana's death, Africa became the only place he wasn't a prince. It was his myth, his reset button. But let's be honest, he sometimes sounds like a Victorian explorer with a conservationist rebrand. Harry's Lesotho weeks were a rare oasis, and the logistical challenges the kingdom posed to paparazzi were one more reason to love Africa. Now that Harry had left the confines of Eton and the PCC code, the press considered the unpredictable younger brother fair game, especially when they first caught wind of Chelsy Davy, who had captivated Harry on a sidebar excursion from Lesotho to Cape Town. The media bloodhounds sniffed out the couple when they tried to have a romantic getaway before Harry entered Sandhurst, tracking them to the sequestered tropical island of Bazaruto off the coast of Mozambique. Charles Davy had footed the bill for the private plane that took the infatuated teenagers to their literal love shack with a heavenly 3-mile exclusion zone. That didn't deter Murdoch's News of the World from sending reporter Sarah Arnold and a photographer to pose as a honeymoon couple with straw hats concealing their pasty tabloid mugs, until the government dispatched 8 militia members to demand that the unmasked duo beat it off the island within 15 minutes. This is pure espionage theater. Straw hats, fake honeymoons, military interventions. The press didn't just stalk the royals, they ran black ops. It's almost laughable. Until you realize it's how a 22-year-old girl's relationship was surveilled like a terrorist cell. In London, the paparazzi were always waiting in packs as Chelsy and Harry emerged after a night of downing crack babies, a tastelessly named cocktail of passion fruit, vodka, and champagne, at Bougie's nightclub. The coverage created a distorted image of Chelsy as nothing but a boozed-up party girl. In reality, she was studying hard at university and later worked long hours in leveraged finance at Allen and Overy, a top London law firm. The relentless coverage created tension between Harry and Chelsy. When she was back in South Africa, she didn't relish reading the Dirty Harry headline in The Sun when he had a notably pleasant time with a lap dancer at a strip club in Slough to celebrate the end of his officer training at Sandhurst. Chelsy became increasingly vexed with the price she paid for dating Harry. The conventional and sexist tabloid tropes that her goal was to land the prince were way off the mark. Unlike Kate Middleton, who openly rearranged her life and job around William's schedule, Chelsy clearly intended to forge her own professional identity. Here's the tabloid trick: reduce a complex woman to a single bad photo. Never mind that she was killing it at a top law firm. The only image the world saw was 4 a.m. at Bougie's. Meanwhile, Harry gets a lap dance and they run it like it's adorable mischief. Misogyny and high-res tabloid print. Patty Harverson remembers the pivotal day in 2005 when he was sitting in Jamie Luther Pinkerton's office at the back of St. James's Palace and mentioned that his voicemail had been acting up. Jamie said he had been noticing the same thing, Harverson told me. At the same time, the News of the World had been printing things that we couldn't understand how they were getting. They were trivial, but spot on. By November 2005, Prince William was becoming suspicious too. He'd noticed that the contents of a particular voicemail left for him by close friend and ITN correspondent Tom Bradby had also shown up in the News of the World. Later, Bradby told the Daily Express, the story, a stupid, uninteresting story, was in the News of the World. He knew there was no way I would have told anyone. And he'd told no one apart from his secretary, who would never have dreamed of saying anything. Sure enough, Tyrell confirmed to the palace advisors that the mysterious voicemail glitches were likely evidence of being breached. There was a clear case to bring in the police to look at it, Harverson told me. The sneaky beakies followed the trail, and it didn't take them long at all to trace the calls to the News of the World offices. When Scotland Yard examined Mulcair's handwritten records, they found he had targeted more than 6,000 people in all. I think this is when the royals start to grasp the depth of the rot. It wasn't just creepy. It was systemic. Voicemails, hacked, private plans, leaked, trust, erased. For Harry, this wasn't just harassment. It was institutional betrayal hiding behind Fleet Street smirks. With her tumbling mane of curly red hair and vulpine networking skills, Brooks was lethally successful penetrating the political and media corridors of power. She can turn people over and have dinner with them the next day, said former Sun editor David Yelland. Brooks won new readers at the News of the World by exploiting primal populist rage with a wildly irresponsible campaign to name and shame pedophiles, which led to vigilante mobs terrorizing suspected sex offenders. To get dirt on 16-year-old Harry, News of the World unleashed a triple whammy. Brooks, the fake sheikh, and hacker Glenn Mulcair. Mazur got nothing, Mulcair got nothing, but that didn't stop Rebekah. She bluffed palace aides into a confession and scored a 7-page drugs shame spread with zero evidence. The paper manipulated the timeline to make Charles look like a caring father and Harry like a repentant mess. Harry had been made to pretend penitence at a drug clinic, to sustain a fake narrative, and prettify his father's PR. He was receiving a bitter lesson in what it meant to be third in line to the throne, and the corrosive scrutiny would only intensify as he approached adulthood. Sheesh, I've said some mean things about Harry, but this book is really making me see things in new light. Of course we knew he had a bad childhood, but some details are still shocking. This scene is tabloid manipulation 101. They had nothing, literally nothing, and they still got a full-page drug shame out of it. It's a masterclass in media blackmail. And what did the palace do? Serve up a PR sacrificial lamb in Harry to polish Charles's halo. Chelsy Davy had everything royal reporters wanted: sizzle, youth, and proximity to Harry. Consequently, in the early aughts, she was illegally hacked, tapped, and blagged more than any other member of the prince's circle. Between 2004 and 2010, her voicemails were routinely intercepted. More than a dozen private investigators on 2 continents were illegally tasked by staff reporters and editors to obtain her phone bills, medical records, travel itineraries, flight details, hotel receipts, bank accounts, and credit card statements. Hundreds of thousands of pounds were paid, some of it to and from shady offshore accounts operated by fly-by-night pop-up companies. Honestly, the sheer scale of what they did to Chelsy is stomach-turning. Dozens of private investigators, stolen medical records, tapped phones. And why? Because she had the audacity to date a prince. It's gendered abuse disguised as celebrity journalism. The rest of the chapter talks about how in the end the hackers and journos behind them did get caught, but only after years of cover-ups. For a while, it looked like the two people jailed in 2007, Clive Goodman and Glenn Mulcaire, would be the fall guys, with everyone else walking free. But it was the Guardian's Nick Davies who refused to let the story die. His relentless reporting exposed widespread phone hacking that affected not just royals, but MPs, actors, and even a murdered schoolgirl. Public outrage exploded. Eventually, the fallout reached the top. Andy Coulson, who had moved from editing News of the World to working as David Cameron's communications director, was sentenced to 18 months in jail. Rebekah Brooks was arrested for perverting the course of justice, but was controversially acquitted. James Murdoch resigned, and Rupert Murdoch was forced to shut down News of the World, his 168-year-old tabloid empire. Dozens were arrested, 8 people were convicted, and while some of the biggest names escaped real consequences, the scandal still cost Murdoch billions and confirmed Harry's worst fears about the press. And that, my friends, is Chapter 15. From wild Zimbabwean parties to Westminster inquiries, this chapter is a fever dream of voyeurism, vengeance, and vindication. If you ever thought the royals had it easy, think again. Hit subscribe because next week we're heading into another interesting chapter. You won't want to miss it.